Welcome everyone, Matsimus here with you today. Thank you so much for joining me on this video. So guys, it's time to stop. It is time to stop listening to those armor naysayers out there that are adamant in saying that tanks are obsolete, they can't be used anymore because there's so much technology that can take them out. ATGMs, or if you don't know what that means, anti-tank guided missile systems, IEDs, the list goes on and on and on. And honestly, I'm tired of listening to it because it is totally ridiculous. Now, understandably, there is a massive threat out there towards armored fighting vehicles in the modern day world, and it's not changed. Nothing has changed since the Cold War and even before into the Second World War. There's always been threats to tanks outside that of obviously other tanks and infantry fighting vehicles that could potentially engage it. Let's be honest here guys, the main threat that we really are seeing towards armored fighting vehicles today is anti-tank guided missiles. There is a whole plethora of different types, variations, configurations of anti-tank guided missiles, and I'll be very honest with you, I have a massive respect for modern day tankers out there today that have to potentially, in their military careers, come across weapon systems that could engage their vehicle from long distance without even knowing by these kind of weapons. It's pretty scary stuff, you know. You have a 65-ton tank that costs close to $4 million that can be taken out by a rocket that costs up to around $150,000. That's scary stuff. However, I am always listening to comments in my videos of, well, this thing's useless. A tank could take that out, or a missile could take that out in 10 seconds flat. This is true. Of course it's true. Yes, there are many weapons that are able to take tanks out today, but you've got to remember that not every single tank out there is designed in such a way that it can't defend itself against such weapon systems. You've got to remember, guys, the arms race is a race. It is a race to find who can find the technology that can beat the next technology. Very similar to the technology that you use every day, like your iPhone. There's always going to be a company that's going to try and supersede or better the other product that is being sold. The exact same thing is applying in the defense sector. If a weapon has been designed to engage another target, and that target is from another company, that other company is going to try its best to counter that weapon. Sadly, it's just a fact of life, and especially when it comes to defense contracts because money is involved. There is so many different technology services out there now that are being put into place to try and protect combat vehicles from trucks, jeeps, armored personnel carriers, and obviously main battle tanks. Main battle tanks are one of the biggest sectors right now that is starting to come into the spotlight, where people are saying, you know what, those Cold War RPGs, shoulder-fired RPGs that could only be fired up to around 600 meters fairly effectively, are really not the number one threat to our armored fighting vehicles anymore. It is the top-down attack munitions, the more sophisticated wire-guided missiles such as the TOW, as we're seeing obviously in Syria and such, as well as Iraq and other countries. But what I want to specifically talk about today is weapons that are going to be engaged towards armored fighting vehicles such as tanks. The comments I hear and the constant naysayers saying that tanks are obsolete always pull out the, well, it can be engaged by a missile, it can easily be taken out by a missile, there's even certain upgrade packages of armor that cannot stop these kind of missiles, and this is completely true and factual. There are certain armor packages that cannot stop certain types of munitions, especially top-down attack munitions we're seeing, but interestingly enough, there is a lot of companies out there that are trying their best to get into the market to make defense measures for tanks. We know many different variants of these defense measures. One of the most impressive and the most battle-tested is the trophy defense mechanism used by the Israeli armed forces, and it's doing very well for itself. Let's be honest here, Israel is in quite the conflict constantly. Their armored fighting vehicles with the Merkava are constantly needing to be defended from such attacks, and the US military is finally getting on board to say, you know what, maybe we'll look into getting the trophy defense system. Now, this is all sort of hearsay. The US military, in all its wisdom, have obviously decided to look at many different options for their own particular design for defending their armored fighting vehicles, and of course, why not? This is the thing that makes me laugh the most, is a lot of people say, well, yes, the M1A2 Abrams is the most defendable, most powerful main battle tank in the world. Granted, it is, for sure. But it's rather amusing to me that we really don't have much in terms of defense measures against such anti-tank guided weapons that are showcased publicly for these vehicles. That comes along the side of the US and UK military. The UK is the exact same. We don't have the kind of showcasing that you see similar to Israel and other countries, and Russia too. You know, they have their own defensive measures that are being showcased, and it makes me wonder why. Why is money not being pumped into making these systems perfect? And I mean perfect. If you're going to make a $5 million tank or a $2 million tank and upgrade it to a $5 million tank, why would you not pump as much funding as you can in to defensive measures of these vehicles? And this is the reason why people continue pulling out this, well, tanks are obsolete in the Western world because, you know, there's so many different anti-tank guided weapon systems out there and there's no real defensive measures that are put on tanks. That I can kind of agree with. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The British military is actually looking into the same process of looking into talking to Rafael, who make the defensive measures for the Israel military, and actually saying, you know what, actually, can we take on some of your designs and technology and bring it onto our own vehicles? Another thing, guys, is this stuff is expensive. It's not cheap and it's delicate, which means they're not going to chuck this stuff all over vehicles to go on operational exercises in, say, Poland or in 29 Palms in the United States. They're not going to bring all the fancy-dancy kit out and stick it on these vehicles for just a simple training exercise, because you've got to remember that as soon as you accidentally knock one of these units, it's done. It's busted. They're delicate pieces of equipment. We're looking at mirrors that can detect laser beams. We're looking at, basically launchers that can launch flares or mini rockets or bomblets that can actually prevent these projectiles hitting the vehicle. This is all expensive technology that, of course, militaries are only going to invest in certain amounts. They're not going to equip an entire brigade of tanks or a battalion of tanks with this equipment if there's no requirement for it. There really is no need to put all this equipment onto tanks that are just operating in an exercise environment. Of course, if they get sent on an operational deployment, say Iraq, or let's not say the other word beginning with I, because I'm sure a lot of people get very upset, but if something was to come up that says, you know what, we need to deploy our vehicles, we need something that will protect against these advanced threats that are coming out, such as anti-tank guided missiles, they'll probably start pumping that money in very quickly to do what's called an operational or an urgent operational requirement. That's what the British Army call it. It's basically a very quick package, upgrade package that they can put onto the vehicle and allow it to serve in the environment it's placed in, but at the same time not costing a fortune to have to try and showcase it to the entire battalion, brigade, battalion, whatever it may be, around the world. That's why I find it so funny when people say, well, no, that tank's useless, it's got no active protection system. How do you know that? How do you know that there is not an active protection system that the US, UK, or other militaries around the world do not have from other militaries that share the technology to place on their vehicles? And that's the funniest part that I hear about that all the time. They have no real clue as to whether or not the US military or other militaries really do have that technology in place. I honestly feel that the M1A2 Abrams SEP model and other variants will have an active protective system somewhere out there, DARPA or whoever else is making them, has it in place and ready to install an M1A1. If it was needed, it's there. And the same thing for the Challenger 2. The Challenger 2 does have an upgrade kit, which once again is not implemented unless they're going on an operational deployment because it's just too bloody expensive. And that is definitely something I think militaries around the world are doing. They're not showcasing this stuff as much because they don't A, have the money to really do so, B, for the most part, technology like that is quite secretive. The Russians have done actually a really good job at showing some of their technology, and fair play to them. I have a lot of respect for them for doing that with the T-14 Armada. You're actually seeing the technology on the vehicle. Obviously, with the Russians, they really do like to showcase their equipment, and good for them, as the US, but I think there's a couple of cards hidden under the table when it comes to this type of technology. You've got to remember the US military, for sure, pumping so much money into tanks, are going to say, you know what, there's a couple of things we want to keep under the table, a couple of things that we really don't want to share. Makes complete sense to me. I don't know if the UK is following suit, but I can almost guarantee that the US military has a defensive measuring system in there that is their own design, that's their own specifications for their vehicles that works. Are we going to see it? I don't know. I would love to see these designs that are coming out and these new technologies being showcased more, so one, I can review them more, and two, we can actually start seeing this kind of technology being brought into the modern world. It's not just on video games anymore, and we're seeing on these fancy promotional videos. We're actually seeing the technology being put in place and working. And honestly, the number one point that we're trying to get across here is protection of human life, of our own countries and other countries. Obviously, we don't want people getting hurt. And this technology isn't just there to showcase, it's there to protect lives and protect equipment. And the taxpayer, at the end of the day, is paying for this stuff. So you'd expect them to at least showcase it a little bit, but I can understand their, potential to not want to show it. So for all of those out there who say tanks are useless because of anti-tank guided missiles, no, I'm sorry, it's time to stop. It is time to stop these shenanigans. Tanks will always have a use on the battlefield, which is a completely different topic. But for the most part, for those of you who keep saying that anti-tank guided missiles are the be-all and end-all of taking out tanks, I'm sorry, but there is technology that is very proven in being able to stop these advanced weapon systems engaging tanks. Are they perfect? Of course not. We're talking about some very tight tolerances here with a missile hitting a tank or some kind of munition coming towards the vehicle at very high speeds, trajectories, and angles. There's always going to be some potential for a failure there, but it is there. There is a system in place that can potentially stop these kind of munitions. I think it's fantastic. I want to see more of it. Guys, if you enjoyed today's video and you agree or disagree, I'd love to hear in the comment section below. Fire away your arguments, lay into it, let me know what you think about it. If you want to support my channel, guys, I'd really, really appreciate you check out my Patreon page, which is in the description box below. It is a donation page, and it does work via PayPal and other different kinds of monetary systems out there. I'd really appreciate if you want to support me and my channel going forward, then go check out that page. And as always, thanks to everyone who's been doing that so far. And leave me a like. If you want to follow me on Facebook, feel free to do so. On a side note, if many of you made it to the end of this video, Discord will be coming back. Yes, I finally decided to bring my Discord channel back into service. It will be coming in the near future. I've decided, you know what, there's a lot of people out there that want to try and get under my skin, and that's just going to happen regardless. So I'm going to bring back the Discord, and we're going to have a bit of a chat here and there, and play some games once again, and try and get the community fired up again, and just try and ignore the people who really want to try and get under my skin, which it is what it is. That's part of the world that we live in with YouTube and such. Anyway, guys, hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining me, and bye-bye.